After over a decade of the Arab Spring that swept through North Africa, the strategic region became shaky. Today, the situation has, however, changed as a recent event, especially around the Western Sahara crisis, and of course, with the conflicts between Morocco, Algeria, and others, with actually the recent pronouncement from France and Spain, and the crisis in the Middle East have provided a scope to revisit the geopolitical setting of the region. So today's edition of Global Insight will take a deeper look into the geopolitical setup of the strategic North African region, and also it will unravel major stakes at play in the region. And asking these questions: how do internal struggles and external influences shape the destiny of nations, particularly Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Morocco, among other nations in the region? What are the implications of regional conflict, economic instability, and foreign interference in present-day society as far as the North African politics or geopolitics is concerned? How has the present distorted world order reverberated the governance structure and the geopolitical position of North Africa? These are some of the questions that we're going to answer in the course of today's discursive program of Global Insight with a panel of experts. And it is, of course, on For You Media Africa. Let me join you right after this. Hello, beautiful people of Africa. Welcome again to another exciting moment for us to be together on the platform of Global Insight, proposed to you by the Pan-African Television For You Media Africa. Today, we are taking focus on the governance structure and the geopolitical setting of the North African region, given that in 2011, as underlined in the preamble, there was, the outbreak of the Arab Spring that started, of course, in Tunisia and extended to other countries. But today we still want to look at how this has affected the country's setting, especially along regional borders and also across the globe, and of course how the region, its strategic position affecting the global setting, given that changes have occurred in the classification of the global world order. We want to look at the relevance or stakes at play as far as North Africa is concerned. We want to revisit recent decisions which were taken by, France coming out rightly pronouncing a supporter for the North African state of Morocco, given its stance in the position of the Western Sahara crisis, and how this has actually led to the deterioration of diplomatic ties between Algeria and Morocco. We also want to look at the strategic position of North Africa and how the ongoing crisis in the Middle East and also the geopolitical contestation in the present-day society is affecting, or if actually it has affected the governance system or understanding of the North African states. With a panel of experts, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to understand critically some of these major stakes at play and propose recommendations on how to re-strategize or how to bring forth some of these problems faced by the countries, especially as far as the social contract that leaders entered with the population some 12 years ago after the start of the first Arab Spring. To note that this is the 21st century, and some pundit or historians have noted that we have already entered also the second phase of the Arab Spring, given all the changes which are occurring in present-day society. So I'll be taking you now to Algeria. Of course, we're privileged to have a representative from North Africa Africa to comment on this very important topic. So I'll be taking you to Algeria to acknowledge the presence of Professor LAEED ZAGHLAMI, Faculty of Communication and Information in Algiers University. Hello to you, Professor, and it's always a pleasure having you to comment on very important topics on for you Media Africa. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me on your program, as well as to Mrs. NAJET ZAMMOURI for her participation.
Thank you. Indeed, thank you for giving it priority. We stay in North Africa this time around in Tunisia to acknowledge the presence of NAJET ZAMMOURI, certified professor of pedagogy and also human rights activist. Welcome, Madam, and it's a pleasure having you this day on today's edition of Global Insight.
It's a pleasure for me too. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this valuable show, and thank you so much for being also with the eminent Professor LAEED from Algeria.
We should be thanking you, Madam, for giving us this opportunity to get, of course, your understanding of the present stakes in the North Africa and the strategic region. Just to note that since the uprising in 2011, like we underlined already, we saw some sort of, destabilization that came into the region, particularly in Libya, and we are seeing now the diplomatic contestation Algeria between Algeria and Morocco. We cannot also forget the involvement of the Algerian government in trying to resolve the crisis in the Sahara region, and we will also highlight how the geopolitical ramifications of all of these settings that came into play in North Africa 12 years after the Arab Spring. Let me right off with you, Madam NAJET. We want to have a holistic understanding of our subject matter, which is looking at the geopolitical stakes and security stakes in North Africa, and how important it is for us to discuss given today's changing world.
Yeah, actually, the geopolitical context in North Africa, we say it's shaped by historical, political, economic, and security factors. We know that the region includes 5 countries: Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Mauritania. Each of these countries has its own internal dynamics. Sure. But some challenges we will see then, and issues are common across the region. As you have told now, in Tunisia, for example, since the uprising of 12/11, or revolution, if you want, Tunisia actually is the only country to have successfully transitioned to democracy among those affected by the other Arab Spring. So I can also maybe mention Syria, Yemen, Libya, etc.
Yes.
However, to be honest, challenges still persist, such as political instability, economic tensions, corruption, and the rise of authoritarianism. The fragile economic and social situation directly affects political stability. Despite the progress made, Tunisia also faced persistent challenges. The country has had to face economic problems such as high unemployment, economic inequalities, they are still there. The problem of migration that I talk about, Ms. Clarice, in the former show. So the problem of migration, which have fueled social discontent. In addition, political and social tensions have sometimes hampered the coherent implementation of democratic reforms. On the political level, for instance, Tunisia has known a series of governments, many governments and coalitions. and presidents since the fall of the old regime of Ben Ali. Political division and the multiplicity of political parties have sometimes hampered coherent decision-making and the implementation of essential reforms. When I say essential reforms, of course, I'm speaking about economic reforms, institutional reforms, social reforms. So there is a political instability. So these economic challenges, such as high unemployment, as I told you, and socio-economic inequalities still persist in Tunisia. Economic hardship can fuel social discount and weaken support for democracy if citizens do not perceive an improvement in their living conditions. They don't perceive this improvement, unfortunately. There are always groups of people who feel marginalized and underrepresented, as the young people, as women, as the old people. So in July, now, if you want me to speak about what has happened in July 2021, for example, the current president, Said, known for his anti-corruption stance, that's right, that's true, and his anti-establishment approach. But he is exercising unusual powers. What I mean by unusual powers? Unusual powers including temporarily suspended parliament, for example, dismissing the prime ministers, dissolving the High Council of the Judiciary, which has sparked debates about the limits of his powers and the political direction of the country. Now, the situation under the current president has sparked concerns, at least among the civil society that I consider myself a leader in the civil society in Tunisia. Mm-hmm. So has sparked concerns about the erosion of democracy. Why? Because all the democratic institutions was dissolved, was suspending. Now there is no constitutional court. There is no High Council of the Judiciary. So all these high instances were unfortunately suspended or dissolved. Okay. Of course, some critics about his leadership, as we consider him as an authoritarian or even more dictatorial. Since he took power, in July 2021, where he suspended the parliament, as I told you, and dissolved the government, citing emergency powers, Tunisia has faced political and constitutional crisis. So many political opponents now who are weakened, even the political parties are now weakened. Civil society groups also, and even many international observers, they accuse Said of consolidating power and undermining the democratic gains made after the 2011 uprising or revolution. Okay. So he's just one sentence, his unilateral moves including dissolving the independent judicial body, introducing a new constitution through a referendum with low voter turnout and tightening control over the executive, have raised alarms about authoritarianism.
All right, thank you so much, Najet. Of course, in the course of the program, we're going to revisit some of the points you highlighted to bring better clarification and how some of these points are actually undermining the countries or the regions are standing, especially on issues of global interest concerning Africa. Let's come back to you, Professor LAEED, having your own perspective of our topic for this day, geopolitical and security stakes in North Africa, taking into consideration the recent events which has occurred along the diplomatic lines, Algeria, Morocco, and also how the situation in the Middle East is a call for concern in the strategic North African region.
Thank you, Clarice, again for having me on your program, and thank you to Mrs. NAJET ZAMMOURI for her introduction regarding the situation in Tunisia. We are very sympathetic to what's happening in our neighbors' country. I think overall, I would say MENA region, Middle East and North Africa are interlinked, and therefore what happened in one part will for sure impact the other, whether we speak about the Middle East in the war in Gaza, the trouble in other part of West Bank, and of course it has its effect and its impact on North Africa. And we unfortunately we have to admit we have not enjoyed a peaceful time here in North Africa. Well, we went through, as you said, the Arab Spring 2011. In Algeria, it was not almost concerned because President at that time decided to contain the protest. So it is not easy to adapt ourselves to the new waves of change and democracy. Maybe in our region, I'm talking from the Algerian point of view, we want to advocate democratic rules and practices and principles that are in harmony, in conformity with our values, with our roots, with our, of course, principles. We do not like to import democracy made in Europe, made in Western countries, because we thought that of course there are some common values, common principles when it comes to freedom of the press, when it comes to social justice, when it comes to gender equality, nobody denies. But there are some areas, some domain where we don't have necessarily the same, I would say, concept and understanding and perception. And of course, having said that, we have seen in North Africa particularly, when I speak North Africa, I'm speaking about countries that are members of Union of Maghreb Arab, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and of course Mauritania. And this project, this project has been on the table now for almost 30 years, but nothing very concrete has been implemented. The reason it's economic one, it's political one, is interference, it's security. But more importantly, we don't. I think I would say, and I am confident that Union of Maghreb Arab as the only regional economic commission in Africa that is left lagging behind. And if we see whether, even though with some difficulties, ECOWAS or with the Eastern Country Community or SADC in the south of Africa, so there are more or less activity. But here in North Africa is completely dead. And sure, external countries have benefited from this vacuum and interfere in the region. So let's make it clear, and to answer your question, Clarice, situation has worsened, especially because between the rivalry between Algeria and Morocco regarding this question of Western Sahara.
Absolutely, yes. So,
yes, let's make it clear again and again. We are not concerned by Western. We don't have any intention whatsoever to annex Western Sahara or to occupy whatsoever. No, the rules are clear. We say that this part of Africa, this country, is seen the last colony in Africa. Whether like it or not, we leave it to the United Nations Security Council to decide for that. That's it. That's the position of Algeria. And having said that, of course, United Nations has created in 1990 a mission to implement a referendum in that part of Africa, but Until now, that referendum didn't take place. In the meantime, Morocco takes benefit of the geopolitical situation and stability, and occupied 80% of the territory is occupied by Moroccan forces. Now we in Algeria we offered shelters to over 200,000 refugees in Tindouf in the extreme west of Algeria. But we are in support of self-determination of country and independence, but we do not interfere. So, having said that, the things get even worse about 4 years ago, when the president of USA, Donald Trump, decided, or I would say not decided, but actually forced or blackmailed Morocco to normalize the relation with Israel. In counterpart, USA will recognize the authority of Morocco over Western Sahara. Thus, and of course, this situation stir up a lot of anger from Algeria, and 10 countries get into more worsening relation. We cut off relation because of Morocco accusation that Algeria were behind a terrorist attack in Marrakesh in 1994. So anyhow, the situation now, the geopolitical situation is very unstable, besides the Security Council, Security Quotient, because now we have also in the south with the military coup d'etat in Morocco, in Morocco, I would say in Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, and Guinea. So again, another source of trouble for Algeria. And as you may know, Algeria has 7 countries bordering with about 7,500 kilometers of frontier. So Algeria is a huge country, and it has, of course, it's for us, it's a headache to have such a trouble around our frontiers. But we are working we are adopting very, I would say, cautious position to avoid any escalade, or I would say deflagration. So we are being patient and adopting a very preventive position.
Thank you for that, Professor LAEED. You quite articulated some of the points, of course, which are to be considered. I will stay with you, Professor LAEED. Today we are looking at the geopolitical setting and the security situation of North Africa. And if we're going back to the 2011 uprising, we'll recall that some of the presidents back then were being referred to as dictators. I am practically talking about the leadership of Libya, and then Muammar Gaddafi. And then when we look at where we are today, we begin to understand, like we underlined already in the preamble, that the changes which have occurred in the global setting have caused or pushed the African continent or stakeholders across Africa to understand, international politics and how some of these instances are curtailed or planned with an objective. So we're looking at Libya after the fall of Gaddafi, and we see that the country is still shattered, though there is already progress ongoing in terms of development. So the question is, now with the reality already known by major stakeholders in the North African region, how can we then advocate for a more practical diplomatic solution that will, encompass all the parties, including Algeria, Morocco, and even the Sahel region, to ensure that the proliferation of, these the third parties, which are further exacerbating the tension between these neighboring countries, can be cut in order for Africa and North Africa particularly to have a common stance, especially on continental affairs.
Is it for me or Mrs. Janet?
Professor LAEED, the question is directed to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, actually, let's make it clear. The ordeal and the catastrophe started with exactly the so-called Arab Spring, because we cannot forget that those West countries who toppled Colonel Gaddafi and killed him and assassinated him in a very brutal way, this is the consequence of that. And of course, NATO was bombarding Libya, accused of wrongdoings within our country and X and Y. But from that, so the flagellation of Libya has started with, of course, smuggling of arms, terrorists, and the leadership of Libya, Gaddafi, was toppled. It was the beginning of the anarchy all over the place. And of course, the West were not concerned about the security and the peace and stability of Libya, but rather about its oil and its gas. That's exactly what happened. So no doubt about that. They are not concerned about this and that. They are only concerned how to secure providing and, of course, furnishing oil and gas to Europe. And if you remember, the first initiative taken worldwide was the summit in Berlin about it, and I agreed they agreed, so many countries which assisted that, they agreed for a peaceful solution, but that one never happened. What happened right now, the implication of the disorder in Libya is that now we have so many countries interfering in Libya. I don't want to nominate them in order to avoid any concern or any insult to this hurt anyone. But there are so many foreign countries, foreign I would say foreign forces in Libya, whether from the neighbors, whether from the nearing neighbors. So that's why it's a big mess. And General Haftar, who happened to be supported by one big country, one big great power, is there, and he for the last few weeks and days, he was maneuvering to get more power, to occupy more territory within Libya. So practically now, Libya is divided in three, I would say, parts, in three regions. The Benghazi region under the authority of course, of Haftar, and then in Tripoli we have what we call the national government of Libya, recognized by United Nations, and in the south another type of tribal people. So in other words, right now Libya is divided in three parts, and peace is not their concern. Only the voice of arms which speak for the situation right now. But as a result of this mess in Libya, we have now, of course, we, Algerians, for instance, we are concerned for any deflagration and any disorder, because we have about 975 kilometers of frontier with Libya. And of course, I said, disorder will impact our border, whether on security, whether on social or economic. We expect to have flooding of refugees. So, in other words, we are caring for that. But more importantly, all the military arsenal which has Libya, the Gaddafi reign, was almost all smuggled to Sahel, and so many arms were, I don't remember, but I think it was a matter of 4 million of small arms which were in the hands of terrorists, after all. But anyhow, a huge traffic of arms now is happening in the west, in the south of Algeria, and particularly in sub-Saharan countries. And this is another source of concern for Algeria.
All right, thank you so much, Professor LAEED. Coming back to you, Madam NAJET ZAMMOURI, we are looking at the fragmentation of the North African nation, but then there is a pressing problem. I remember you mentioned that in your opening statement on our topic today, the pressing problem of migration. Can we understand how the fragmentation and the diplomatic feud between these countries in North Africa is actually, impeding the steady resolve of the migrant crisis, which actually, the North Africa countries in the North African region are being used as, a route towards crossing to maybe through the Mediterranean for the search of greener pastures.
Yeah, but first of all, if you let me just answer about it. I want to go back just about the question of democracy and
absolutely you can.
Just one word, if you don't mind, and if it is important. We here in Tunisia, for example, we don't think that the democracy and the uprising is imported from the West, and the demand of Tunisian people are, I guess, all the North African people for democracy. It exists, it's there, particularly among younger generations and activists. Yeah, but the path forward requires addressing deep-rooted political, we know that, economic and social challenges, they are there. Democratic reforms in these countries will likely be gradual and even, with setbacks and progress occurring at different paces across the region. Well, nevertheless, the resilience and determination of those pushing for change suggests that the aspiration for democracy remains really alive, still alive, at least in Tunisia. But I guess that it is also there in the other North African country. Sorry, so you asked me about if you don't mind, also I want to speak about Libya, which is also our neighbor. They are our brothers as in Algeria. We consider ourselves as brothers and sisters, and we are concerned really but what is happening in both countries, or even more than what is happening right now in Egypt or in Morocco. Yeah, we should say that Libya is divided between two main political factions, the Government of National Unity and the Libyan National Army, and the role of General Khalifa Haftar, etc. Unfortunately, these rival governments reflect deep regional and ideological divides, with the West generally supporting the Tripoli-based administration and the East enlightened with Haftar. The struggle for control over key institutions such as the central bank, etc., and the oil sector, as my brother, Professor LAEED also said, has been at the heart of the conflict. All is about oil, all is about money, all is about, of course, energy, etc. So everyone know that. And I think I can say so that Turkey is involved, Russia is involved, Western nations are involved also, United Arab Emirates are also involved. So it's a very complex country. As for the migration and destination and migration flows and destinations, now, contrary to the perception that most African migrants are headed for Europe or other continents, the majority of migration in sub-Saharan Africa occurs within the region. Countries, for example, like South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, and Cote d'Ivoire, are key destinations for migrants seeking economic opportunities or fleeing conflict in neighboring countries. In South Africa, for example, a major destination for migrants from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and other Southern African nations, due to its relatively stronger economy. However, South Africa has experienced xenophobic violence against migrants, driven by competition over jobs and resources. So it's very, very complicated. Now, migration for North Africa and Europe. North Africa serves as both a transit and destination point, like as Tunisia, of course. It is a destination, it is a point of transit and destination for sub-Saharan African migrants. Countries like Libya, Algeria, and Morocco are popular transit hubs for migrants attempting to cross the Mediterranean to reach Europe. The migration route through Libya is particularly dangerous, very dangerous right now, due to the political instability and the security instability, with reports of human trafficking, even slavery and abuse of migrants, rapes, etc. In recent years, European countries have sought, you asked me about diplomacy, if it exists. I don't think so. In recent years, European countries have sought to curb migration from sub-Saharan Africa by funding programs to improve border security in North Africa and partnering with countries in Sub-Saharan Africa to address the root causes of migration, such as poverty or poverty and conflicts. For instance, I can speak about the memorandum that Tunisia signed with the European Union, led by Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy. So Tunisia should, of course, you know, all of us, that Tunisia now is going through a very hard economic situation. So the European Union should give money, and Tunisia should extend her frontiers or barriers towards Europe. I mean, they are Tunisians guards will serve as the guards of Europe.
Sure.
While now most migration from sub-Saharan Africa is intra-regional, there is also a significant diaspora in Europe, North America, and the Middle East. So we don't speak enough about these kind of migration. The African diaspora contributes to economies of their home countries through remittances, which are a vital source of income for many households. For example, I have now the data. So according to the World Bank, for example, remittances to sub-Saharan Africa amounted to over $45 billion in 2021, despite the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
Migrants from sub-Saharan Africa often faces many challenges, and still they are still facing these challenges, including perilous journeys, xenophobia, discrimination, racism, legal and documentation issues, refugee camps and displacement, etc. So these are the main challenges that migrants faced currently.
Okay, thank you. Just to remind our televiewers tuning in just now that it is a Global Insight on For You Media Africa. We're streaming live on YouTube, For You Media Africa English. You can also follow us on Facebook, For You Media Africa English, and put your comments on what you think about our topic for discussion this day. In a moment of changing or shifting alliances, we want to see how we can actually mend or fix the problems of the African continent to be able to capitalize on the continent's strategic or competitive intelligence for the betterment of Africa in a well-organized multipolar world. And that is how I will be coming now to you, Professor LAEED. We are aware of that stakeholders or parties involved in the situation in Western Sahara. I quite remember, if actually I'm not making a mistake, during the last SADC meeting, the president of Zimbabwe, His Excellency Emerson Mnangagwa, also highlighted, re-echoing or reiterating the need to accept the status of Western Sahara, especially at the African Union. And today we still see that this position alone is causing a lot of rifts, especially diplomatic rifts between the countries in North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, and it's also giving the foreign powers an added advantage into realizing their geopolitical interest in these countries. I think NAJET just highlighted some of the interest, some aligned to the west, others to the east. So the problem is how these parties can come to the realization that there is need to attend that compromise within the internal dynamics of the region, and of course save Africa a whole lot, especially as its positions it serves in the global stage.
Thank you. Of course, Western Sahara issue has been on the table for the last 50 years or so, since 1975. So the problem is that this conflict has been different for a different process, and the last one is that Morocco and the Polisario, which is the military front of Republic of Sahara, agreed on ceasefire 1991.
Sure.
On condition they have to organize a referendum, and then that referendum never take place till now. Of course, in the meantime, there was the United Nations Security Council has set up a MINUSO mission for Western Sahara to its main objective is of course its main objectives are to first of all monitor the ceasefire, and secondly to organize to count the number of people concerned by the referendum. And unfortunately there was a lot of mismanagement, a lot of interference. So until about 3 years ago, the Western Sahara, the Sahrawi were fed up of waiting endlessly, so they resumed their fight. And now situation is in really deadlocked one. So this is the fact. On the other ground, on the other hand, and in parallel, Western Sahara were admitted to African Union, not African Union. Let's make it more clear, to the Organization of African Union, of African Unity, before it became African Union 2002.
Yeah.
And Western Sahara, or Republic of Sahara, signed the constitutional act of the birth of African Union, and therefore it is a fully member of the creation of African Union. So no one can deny that. But Morocco tried by hook or by crook to discharge it, and they came back and they tried to get into some kind of manipulation, some kind of I would say intimidation and blackmailing. And today, what happened for the last event or so, as I said, in 2020, U.S. President Donald Trump, what he did, he took Morocco to sign for the broker the Abraham Accords, in which it stipulated that Morocco recognized state of Israel, and in counterpart, USA, of course, admit or recognize too the Moroccanity of Western Sahara. So this is blackmailing business, nothing to do with values or principle of whatsoever. And bearing in mind that this conflict is on the table of the Secretary General of United Nations, and as a matter of fact, in 2002 he appointed a new special personal envoy, Stephanie de Mistura, and he was visiting different countries to find out a solution. So you cannot, on one hand, asking for a political solution. On the other hand, supporting and encouraging Moroccan annexation of Western Sahara. Since USA, of course, Morocco was blackmailing with the immigration card with Spain, and Spain once again succumbed to this Moroccan attempt. Then the third one is just about in July, last July, the President of France openly admitted that. Why? For the only reason, because France was expelled from its French colony, whether Mali, Niger, or Burkina Faso, so they want to come back from the back from Morocco. So, and first thing it happened after this accord, French enterprises were given a lot of projects to invest in Morocco. So this is business as usual at the expense of values, of principle, of independence, and of course at the self-determination, a self-right of peoples for determination, for independence. I'm not saying Algeria has nothing to do with this conflict. It's a matter of principle. And of course, now it has impacted, it has been worsening the relation, and it makes things getting so worse between Algeria and Morocco.
Okay, thank you, Professor LAEED. In the same perspective, Madam Najet, we would want to dwell more on actually the genesis as well. Actually highlighted already some of the points that led to the Professor LAEED, please, I plead with you to off your mic so that you do not interrupt the discussion. And now, in line of the ongoing Western Sahara conflict, Madam Najet, how can Algeria, particularly, and Morocco, we know that Tunisia has always taken a neutral stance on this particular issue. How can these prime countries now navigate these historical tensions which we just mentioned towards a more constructive and diplomatic solution? It's true that you highlighted earlier on that you don't believe diplomacy exists, but then what, in your opinion, do you think is the right parameter for Algeria, Morocco, and even countries around in the Maghreb region can navigate to attain a level of, a compromise or consensus regarding the upheavals which are actually bringing about the susceptibility of the strategic North African region?
Yeah, right. It's a very good question, actually. So we know that the conflict between Morocco and the Polisario Front, backed by Algeria, over Western Sahara remains a major source of tension since 1975. Morocco controls most of the territory, but the Polisario Front claims independence. This situation creates tensions between Algeria and Morocco, unfortunately, impacting their diplomatic and economic relations and polarizing the regional landscape. Actually, we say that, yeah, diplomacy could play a very important role here between Morocco and Algeria, and unfortunately, we can no more speak about the great the Maghreb, the great Maghreb. We can no longer speak about this union since there is this tension between Algeria and Morocco. Of course, I think that Morocco, it's my own point of view, and I think it is the official point of view of Tunisia also, that we stand, of course, with the right of the Saharian people to have got their own territories. We stand with them. But the regional rivalities between Algeria and Morocco, or between Tunisia and Libya also in the 70s and 80s, Why? Because North Africa is influenced by foreign powers. Since the independence of these countries, including the United States, the European Union, Russia, and now Turkey, and the Gulf countries, as I told you, the Emirati, the Qatar. So Libya, for example, in particular, I want to go back to Libya, so because it's a very big concern, has become a battleground for these powers, each supporting different factions. So, for example, Algeria now, I hope if I am wrong, so my brother, Professor Aid, will correct me. Algeria now is doing something, I think, in my point of view, is very good, is seeking to strengthen its alliances with another powers such as China and Russia, while of course maintaining strategic relations with Western powers. So this is I think it's a diplomatic way to go through these issues, to go through these tensions. Because the region's economies largely depend on hydrocarbons, especially in Algeria, gas, with gas, and Libya with oil. But over-reliance on these resources exposes these countries to the volatility of global oil and gas prices. Tunisia, for example, or maybe Morocco, have more diversified economies, like tourism, for example, but face economic challenges such as youth unemployment, social inequalities, and debt. So, of course, if we add migration pressure, etc., these thousands seeking to reach Europe each year, etc. So so I have also to mention climate change, environmental challenges.
Yeah.
So including water scarcity, desertification, and the impact of climate change on agriculture. All these issues exacerbate social tensions, particularly in rural areas, and threaten food security and economic development. So what is the solution? So I don't have really a solution. Otherwise, I should be maybe a minister or even a president of my own country. So yeah. I don't pretend to have a solution, but I think that the European Union's engagement in North Africa is driven by a combination of security, economic, and political interests.
Yeah.
The region's proximity to Europe, its role as a transit point for immigration, its energy resources make it strategically important. The European Union's involvement seeks to manage migration, counter terrorism, secure energy supplies, promote political stability, etc. However, the European Union's policies have faced criticism, particularly regarding their impact on human rights and the humanitarian situation in countries like Libya. Mm-hmm. So nonetheless, I think North Africa remains a critical region for the European Union's foreign and security policies, and for instance, the case of France in some African countries, as Professor LAEED said now. So there is here a tension and a very complex, a very complex context, very complex situation.
Indeed, the situation is complex, and it takes stakeholders, especially political stakeholders, civil society, and others to bring to a point, to come to a point where we can actually have a solution, be it temporal or permanent. But now, Professor LAEED, will you want to comment to the the opinion of NAJET ZAMMOURI before we continue? Okay, yeah, all right. Let's, before coming back to Professor, Madam NAJET ZAMMOURI, let's continue to understand this. You quite mentioned, if I got you well, that North Africa occupies a very strategic position, not just for the African continent, but for the world at large. So how can, of course, the region or regions in this country, leverage on this very important aspect of their strategic geographical positions to enhance, a diplomatic influence on global issues? Regarding, you quite mentioned energy and energy security, and even in the management of migration.
In my point of view, human rights, democracy, very strong institution in our own countries. Democracy is not important from the West. We are able to have our own democracy. We are good enough to be democratic. So promoting democratic governance, human rights, rule of law in our countries. So we should support the democratic transitions in North Africa. I think maybe the European Union should provide financial aid or technical assistance, or maybe electoral support to help strengthen democratic institutions in Tunisia. Why? Because they were the invader of our countries. So that is what they should do now, as we are independent countries. So I think that instability in some countries in North Africa, I don't want to generalize, because it can have spillover effects on neighboring regions, including even Europe. I already said that you are very close to Europe. So if there is instability in one North African country, it could affect the neighboring regions, including Europe itself.
Absolutely.
Events such as civil wars, armed conflicts, terrorism, political unrest can lead to increased migration, terrorism, and disruption to trade. So that's why the European Union should engage in North Africa to prevent instability from spreading and impacting Europe's security. So, but if the European Union supports conflict in North Africa, it's not good at all. It's not good at all, because we should support the resolution efforts in North Africa through diplomatic initiatives, mediation efforts. It should work closely with UN or the African Union or some regional organizations. I don't like the Arab Maghreb Union, for example, to promote peace and security. They should, when they say they, of course, it's the European Union. They should, give humanitarian assistance. They should provide humanitarian aid to countries in North Africa affected by conflict, particularly Libya and its displaced populations.
Yeah.
It also should fund programs for refugees, asylum seekers in countries like Tunisia and Egypt. I think this is the solution. We should find a solution together, because we are together in the problems. We are neighbors.
Indeed.
We should find out one solution for all of us.
Indeed, we are together in the problems. Let's look at the feasibility of these points you've just highlighted as per the role of multilateral institutions. And of course, you quite mentioned the European Union. Let's look at, from I think that the global crisis, especially in Eastern Europe, has unveiled some of the lapses of these multilateral institutions, that when there is an internal strife or contestation in Africa, we always try to take it to these multilateral institutions to think that Africa is still pressing for full representation at the United Nations Security Council, where it can take decisive decisions on its position, particularly on issues that concern the continent. And with the infiltration of self-interest from countries that make up these multilateral institutions, what is the feasibility of having a neutral stance or a practical solution towards the regional conflicts or confrontation in the North African region, which have actually exacerbated the security crisis?
Is it me who is...
Okay, I was directing the question to you, Madam Najet.
Okay. Yeah, so it's really security issues in not only in North Africa, but I think in Africa, are multifaceted and deeply interconnected. Because we can't speak about security in Libya and we don't speak about the security in Chad or in Mali or in Niger. So because it is affecting nearly every region of the continent. These issues range from internal conflicts already, terrorism and political instability, to economic challenges, and of course climate change and the influence of external powers. So these are all factors which, deepen this issue, security. So many countries have been plagued by long-standing armed conflicts and civil wars, right? Which have led to significant loss of life, displacement of populations, and destruction of infrastructure. I can mention south of Sudan, for example. Let's speak about south of Sudan. So since gaining independence in 2011, South Sudan has been, what's the word? The right was engulfed in a civil war between rival factions, causing mass displacement and severe humanitarian crisis. Democratic Republic of Congo also, the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, has seen decades and decades of conflicts involving various rebel groups, military, etc. Central Africa Republic. Civil war in Central Africa Republic has resulted in widespread violence between various rebel groups and so on. So the protected nature of these conflicts has weakened state institutions. That's why I speak of rule of law. State institutions, if we establish very strong democratic institutions, we can go through these problems, or at least some of them.
Okay, all right.
Because otherwise we are going to increase human suffering while complicating efforts for peace and development.
Indeed, Najet. Of course, Professor LAEED, before you actually leave, we are actually looking at the feasibility of having multilateral, especially international organizations, step into the crisis in North Africa, given also their geopolitical standing. Do you think we can have a feasible and genuine solution coming from them? Professor LAEED? Professor LAEED, please can you unmute your mic? We can't hear you.
Yes, I think what we should know, remember. Can you hear me?
Sure, Professor. Sure.
Yes. What we should now, time has come, we should now work together, the whole 5 countries of the Maghreb to work together and try to find out a solution to this deadlocked position. And of course, if we are weak between us, we won't get any prospect for the future, and stakes of political troubles and security problems will continue.
Are you there, Professor?
Sorry, I'm so sorry, I was cut off. So I was saying, Clarice, that we should now work together, all countries, with goodwill to work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your contribution on our topic for this day, Professor. We appreciate your time, the sacrifices you make, and each and everybody to ensuring that you make comments. Professor, please, can you please mute your mic? Thank you. We were saying that we appreciate, of course, the sacrifices you make to make comment and, of course, bring insight to our topic for discussions. And today we are focused on North Africa. Let me come back to you, Madam NAJET ZAMMOURI. We are still looking at some of those complexities which can just, which can have, you know, a more political solutions. Particularly the contestation between Algeria and Morocco. What do you think are some of those political solutions that we can propose towards ending this flare? Professor LAEED, please, can you mute yourself? Professor LAEED, please, you can disconnect from the meeting so as to better participate in the next and also for us to continue in, you know, without interruption. Thank you so much. If you got the question, Madam NAJET, I will appreciate if you comment on the feasibility of a political solution in solving the crisis stemming from, you know, especially the Western Sahara region and the involvement of foreign countries, France, Spain, and, you know, the comments which have exacerbated this internal flare in North Africa.
السلطة الفلسطينية أقول دعم للمقاومة الفلسطينية دعم الشعب الفلسطيني ماديا ومعنويا ودبلوماسيا أنا أرى في الأمم المتحدة.
At this particular moment, Professor LAEED, please, can you disconnect from the meeting, please?
حان الأوان والكيان الصهيوني لو لم يجد
Madam LAEED, NAJET, I was talking about the feasibility of a political solution to the crisis rocking Northern Africa.
كل الطاقات كل القذائف الفلسطينية سواء كانت في المنظمة المتحدة الفلسطينية في السبعينيات في الثمانينات في التسعينيات والشيخ ياسين في التسعينيات في الألفين إلى غير ذلك.
These countries is rooted in a complex historical and political context. It's not political but historical context, involving territorial disputes, differing national identities and geopolitical dynamics. So, for example, I can mention the historical background, colonial legacy, first of all. So maybe Mr. LAEED forgot to speak about the colonial legacy. We should say that the roots of the conflict can be traced back to colonial times when both Algeria and Morocco were under French and Spanish rule. And the colonial borders drawn during this period did not reflect the historical or ethnic ties among the people of North Africa. And then there was the independence movement. So both countries gained independence in the early 1960s. Algeria, I guess, in 1962 and Morocco in 56 or 57, but their paths diverged significantly. Algeria emerged as a socialist state while Morocco maintained a monarchy, you know? So already they are politically divided. They are different political regimes. There are territorial disputes. Western Sahara, the most significant point of contention is the status of Western Sahara, a territory claimed by both Morocco and the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, which is supported by Algeria and now by Tunisia, and Tunisians. Following Spain's withdrawal from Western Sahara in 75, Morocco annexed the territory, leading to prolonged conflict with the Sahrawi independence movement.
Yeah.
The Polisario Front, Algeria, for example, has provided political and military support, we should not forget that, to the Polisario Front, which has fueled tensions between Algeria and Morocco. This is why there is this tension, because Algeria provided politically and mainly military support. So I think that diplomatic tensions also are there in recent years, for instance. Diplomatic relations between Algeria and Morocco have deteriorated, leading to the closure of their borders in 94 and the expulsion of ambassadors. Both countries have engaged in a war of words, diplomatic war, accusing each other of supporting terrorism and destabilizing the region. And of course, then the normalization with Israel and the military buildup, etc. So there is an impact on regional security, of course, because the rivalry between Algeria and Morocco has implications for regional security with both countries, seeking influence in various conflicts across North Africa and the Sahel. Their support for different factions in conflicts, such as in Libya and the Sahara region, reflects their broader geopolitics. Anyway, so, you know, it's a very multi-dimensional issue, and we need, in this case, a multi-dimensional solution. So the conflict between these two countries is complex and multifaceted, involving historical grievances, territorial disputes, and differing political ideologies. Efforts to resolve these tensions must address, in my point of view, we should usually direct our diplomatic, solution towards roots, the causes of the conflict, particularly the situation in Western Sahara, and promote dialogue and cooperation between the two countries. Regional and international actors have a role to play in facilitating a peaceful resolution and fostering stability in North Africa.
Thank you, which is a very paramount stability, who bring about a more economic, buoyancy in the country. And we are, of course, if this be the case, we are already trying to solve some of maybe the root cause of the 2011 Arab Spring or uprising in the North African region. Welcome back, Professor. And of course, we are still looking at the feasibility of, of bringing about a lasting solution in the crisis in North Africa. Let's look at the position of Western power and also emerging, global powers. Let's particularize here China and Russia, especially in terms of economic investment and military assistance. What strategies can North African nations adopt to balance their relationships, that is in terms of foreign policy, to balance relationships with both the West and the East for the betterment of the region and the continent as a whole?
حقيقة شكرا على هذا السؤال. الذي أريد أن أوضحه هو على عاتق الدول العربية والدول الإسلامية.
Professor LAEED, please.
هي أن تقدم ما يتوجب.
Please, I'll beg on you to mute the Professor LAEED at the moment. Is actually okay. Thank you so much. We just want to apologize for the interruption, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, we want to reiterate our stance on today, which is on geopolitical and security stakes on the North African region, and what is the political, what are some political rationales for actually behind the crisis, the rivalry between Algeria and Morocco, especially over Western Sahara, and of course, how has the present standing or pronouncement from France exacerbated this already fragile situation. Coming back to you, we still have about 15 minutes to be together, NAJET, ZAMMOURI. Here I was looking at how we can have a balanced foreign policy stance that the North African region can, work with Western powers and also with emerging global powers, particularly China and the Russian Federation, to be able to cement some of the, the shaky positions in North Africa, especially bringing about resolve to the social contract that leaders entered with the local populations in the era of the uprising, which we are yet unresolved.
First of all, strengthening regional cooperation. It is very crucial for addressing shared security challenges in North Africa, first of all. And collaborative efforts can facilitate information sharing, joint operations, and the pooling of resources. For instance, African Union, it is there. The African Union can play a vital role in mediating conflicts, promoting peace initiatives. Honestly, I don't know what African Union is doing right now. What it is doing right now. As the Arab League, for example. What is doing the Arab League right now? Nothing. So the African Union should play, not only can, but should play a vital role in mediating conflicts between, for example, Morocco and Algeria, or Tunisia and Libya, and supporting member states in implementing security frameworks, strengthening the African Union's capabilities in conflict resolution and peacekeeping can enhance its effectiveness in addressing insecurity. Sure. We should also revive the Union of the Maghreb Arab. Why? Because it can foster economic and political cooperation among North African countries. Mm-hmm. It could enable joint initiatives to address security threats, including terrorism, migration, organized crime. And of course, we should join our military exercises. We should conduct joint military exercises among North Africa nations. That's how we can find solution. And of course, the diplomatic way also, we should find a diplomatic solution. We should do some diplomatic efforts to focus on conflict resolution, to address the root causes of insecurity and promote stability in conflict-affected areas. For example, engaging in dialogue in mediation efforts to resolve conflicts, just as in Libya and Mali. It can help end hostilities and establish inclusive governments. International actors, including the United Nations and regional organizations, can play a role in facilitating negotiations. Even the United Nations, what the United Nations is doing right now also, And of course, involving the civil society. We should include civil society organizations, women's groups, local communities in peace processes. That's what our own organization is doing right now, the Tunisian Human Rights League, which is a Nobel Peace Prize laureate in 2015. So we should be involved in peace process because we can ensure that diverse voices to be heard and that agreements address needs and concerns of all stakeholders. And then we can, of course, address economic inequalities. We should think about investment in infrastructure, encouraging investments in infrastructure projects can create jobs, stimulate local economies, reduce grievances and contribute to grievances that contribute to instability. What else? Regional cooperation on projects can enhance economic integration and promote development. We should support, provide support for entrepreneurship and small businesses because it can empower local communities and reduce dependence on illicit activities. This includes access to finance, of course, training programs, mentorship opportunities, etc. And finally, the main issue may be the migration now. But we know the migration is a critical issue in North Africa. So we should think about bilateral and multilateral agreement, establishing agreements between North African countries and the European Union. This agreement can facilitate legal migration channels, enhance border management, improve the protection of migrants' rights, etc. And we could invest in development programs in sub-Saharan Africa because it can address the root causes of migration, such as poverty, lack of opportunities, etc. Collaborative efforts to promote education, healthcare, and job training can also create more stable environments. That's how I see the...
Indeed, a very imperative. I think we are culminating, and I would love to actually end with this question, still directed to you, Madam NAJET ZAMMOURI. What role do you think can, public sentiment, especially in North African nations, play in shaping the country's foreign policy? I beg your pardon, particularly in areas of security and other alliances that can actually bring resolve to some of this crisis, because at the table when we are discussing, it's particularly because of the discontent from the common man. But then, do we really consider their plight? So, what role do you think can their sentiments play in ensuring a new foreign policy stance for North Africa to solve some of these internal strife, and of course, as well as the external influences which are exacerbating the susceptibility in these regions?
Yeah. So yes, it's also a very good question. I thank you very much for that. So before maybe looking for external solutions or diplomatic solutions, let's focus on our own countries, in our internal issues, by, first of all, strengthening governance and rule of law. I think I repeated this word many times today. Governance, good governance, and rule of law in our own countries. How? By promoting good governance, the rule of law, we respect human rights. It is essential for addressing insecurity in our own countries.
Okay.
We can provide technical assistance and training to law enforcement, judicial systems, government institutions can strengthen their capacity to address security challenges effectively. We should promote transparency and accountability. Do we speak enough about transparency and accountability? I don't think so. We should encourage transparency in governments and holding leaders accountable. This can build public trust and reduce corruption, which often fuels grievances and insecurity. It's a big problem in our own countries.
Okay.
We should also counter terrorism cooperation. Coordinated efforts to combat terrorism and violent extremism are essential for enhancing security in our own countries. By establishing mechanisms for intelligence sharing among African countries, we can enhance the ability to track and disrupt terrorist activities and networks.
Okay. Thank you so much, Madam Najet Zammouri, for that concluding phase. Professor, if you're back.
Yes.
Just a concluding phase as we wrap up with the program. Yes.
Go ahead, Clarice.
Please.
A concluding phase, of course, from you, Professor, as we wrap up with the program. What do you think should be the agenda for, especially political leaders in North Africa, towards ending the contestation in the region?
Well, I think we have to. I would say I urge political leader in the region to work together, to face, and try to get together and speak face to face, and to explore all the possibility, or of course, re-establishing, strengthening their relation for the interest of their own people. Because what is happening now in Africa, all geopolitical instability, security threats, and so forth, is not for the interest of the people of the region. On the contrary, it offers an opportunity and an opportunity for international interference. And as we have seen now, with Morocco being normalizing with Israel and with France, United States, Spain recognizing Western Sahara just for the sake of their own interest. We should not get into this kind of blackmailing, intimidation. And here, as we are ahead of the new leadership at Addis Ababa, at African Union, I think African Union has to reconquer its space of independence. Of course, as long as the problem of Western Sahara is pending, there won't be stability in the region. More than that, as time goes by, we will experience more stability, more political tension between different countries. What's happening now also in the Sahara, that their credo, their leitmotif is that African problem should be solved by African people themselves. We should not ask for an intervention.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor. And I think your last intervention just brought us to the end of today's edition of Global Insight. I wish to take this opportunity to acknowledge your presence and, of course, appreciate you ladies and gentlemen for the great insight on our topic for discussion, while actually apologizing, of course, to valued guests, valued audience for the interruptions that we had this day, but that, you know, sometimes we cannot avert some of these situations, but we plead that you stay in the company of programs on For You Media Africa, and of course we're promising to come back subsequently with more interesting and exciting topic of interest that will of course shape Africa's standing not only within but also across the globe. Thank you and have a lovely moment. Bye-bye.